why didn't I die? Well, one, God wanted me here, so there's a supernatural reason. But on a human level, I knew how to fight. I knew how to cope. But it was tough. I will say.
And I'm now thinking about the sin against hope.
Yeah.
And how if you are not following these rules, and you are not storing up consolation, and you are not looking up and saying, I know this is going to end, well, of course you're going to constantly be ticked off, and of course you're going to have a negative attitude, and of course everything is bad, and you have a victim mindset.
We studied through Scupoli spiritual combat, and one of the phrases that captures this is you have to learn to love the fight more than the victory, at least in this life. In this life, you got to learn to love the fight.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I didn't know this was a fight.
That's why you're losing.
Today we are beginning either to domesticate the devil or else to deny him. He is most powerful when he is denied.
Welcome to Devil is in the Details. The devil may be in the details, but God is on the throne. We are continuing our journey into Discernment of Spirits. We are on Rule 10. Please go and listen and watch all the other ones, YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff, and share it if you're enjoying it. Comment, because that helps us out a lot. Like it, share it, follow. That's all very, very helpful to get this message spread further and further. But all that aside, Rule 10: how should I act or prepare when I am in consolation?
Yeah, how should I act or prepare? So obviously, all of the rules tell us how to deal with desolation from a little bit different viewpoint. And just like if you had a security camera and you had 2 or 3, covering a particular area of your house, if you're covering all the area, you have to overlap. Like there's no perfect way to put a camera that gives an angle that another camera wouldn't. You're going to see the same things in some areas, and then the other cameras are going to capture different things in different areas. So sometimes the rules can feel a little bit like that, where it's like, well, it feels like there's a little piece of that in this rule and that rule, and that's just the reason why.
Yeah.
And Ignatius is trying to, as St. Paul does also in the New Testament, trying to help us to be free. And so and these rules develop out of long practice of wrestling in the interior life. I mean, you and I talk all the time about this, about how it is we're discovering or learning ways to follow the Lord and deal with our humanity. That's our biggest problem, of course, is our sin, our brokenness, our humanity, and how we better understand God and ourselves and all this whole process. So Ignatius, like every other spiritual leader in the history of the church who cares about souls of other people, sees patterns, and there are things that he sees in others and he realizes, oh, this worked for me. Okay, let's teach it to someone else. Okay, that worked as well. And so this is just, this just feels like a little nuanced thing that, the rule is incredibly short, or at least as I've done it in this book.
Yeah.
But it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Extremely powerful. You want to go ahead and read it?
Let the one who is in consolation think how he will conduct himself in the desolation which will come after, taking new strength for that time.
Yeah. So when you're in consolation, consider that it's, essentially it's going to end. And then, and you'll have consolation. You'll be able to, grow in your strength. There are a couple of things that I think are super powerful here. One, I always use the example of my many, many surgeries, and how, sometimes when, well, here, let me, before I do that, do you remember ever being in the car with me, going somewhere that you wanted to get to, but because you had no concept of the time? I remember, I don't know if you do, I remember with my dad, because you have no concept of time or distance, you don't know if you're going to be in the car for an hour or 3 hours or 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's a kind of torturous.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I mean, I could elicit those emotions pretty easily. I don't remember an exact scenario, but I think that's a common enough example that almost everyone listening is going to recognize it.
Yeah, I remember one for me when I was a kid was going to miniature golf, which I loved when I was a kid, all the kind of intricacies of miniature golf and going and I kept saying, I actually made my dad mad, God rest his soul, because I kept saying, are we there yet? Are we there yet? You know, it's like a little kid does, because it was torture to me. It's like, you know, I have no idea, you know, and parents.
When you're strapped into a seat, you can't really do anything. And,
yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Well, and, you know, parents would do well to say, to explain the process.
Yeah.
Well, we're 25 miles and we just went a mile. So now we're 24. So I'll count each one down for you. You ready?
Yeah.
You know, you can help our kids a little better than my dad did at that time. I love my dad, but died as a Catholic, God be praised. But that wasn't one of his shining moments, and he didn't help me much. But that gives you a sense of why when you're in desolation, you can feel despair, because you don't know when it's going to end, and you don't even have in your mind that it will end or it can end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think about you when you had your reversion, and probably one of the times that I felt saddest for you was when you told me about how you went home to your home and it was empty.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh God, that is just gut wrenching.
Yeah.
And so I can't remember, had you started working? Yeah, you were working for the Apple Institute.
Yeah.
So at least there was a little bit of light. You were doing granite countertops for that.
And I was running a business. I started a handyman business. So I was pulling 3 different, you know, it was a mess. It was a lot. I was working close to 100 hours a week, I think, just training myself. So
do you remember in that time, because you'd wrecked your life, your wife and your daughter were gone, do you remember in that time having that kind of no sense this is going to end, or am I misapplying it?
Yeah, I think the problem with my experience is that God has given me a lot of graces, and one of the primary graces that he's given me is the will to fight. And I remember being up with the exorcists in DC, and we were doing like a deep clean because of everything we do here. And one of the exorcists, he made a point, and you know what I'm talking about, he's an intense guy. He looks at you and you're like, are you about to hit me? You know, it's just his affect. He's the nicest guy on the planet, but that's just kind of his affect. And he said something along the lines of, when we were all done doing the cleanup, and he goes, well, you're nothing if not a fighter, or something along those. He's like, you came prepared and you're ready to fight. And that's been my experience in therapy. That's been any sort of hardship or trouble or anything like that is grit my teeth and go. You know, you're not gonna feel, you know, punch me in the face, it's fine, I'm still moving forward.
Interesting.
So it's I say that to say that my dealing with these things is a little bit different, and it's hard for me to look and think, okay, well, is it ever going to end? I'm sure that came, but when you're so focused on fighting forward in the midst of the slop, you don't really, for me at least, you don't really focus that much on whether or not it's going to end.
So when you have doubt, despair, and narcissism, are you saying that is not a common temptation that you've experienced?
No, not common. I mean, here's the difficulty. Definitely been in desolation. And you've pointed it out before.
Yeah.
And there's times where I haven't realized it. So I'm saying all this knowing that there are times that I don't realize that I'm in desolation. I don't think despair is the primary one.
Which is it, just out of curiosity?
I think it may even be the narcissism, in the sense that, wow, this really sucks, right? So,
and I don't like it, and getting
and
pissed
I don't like
about
it. Yeah,
that's
it.
That's
so,
you. Yeah.
You know, and then I get mad, but often that frustration and that anger fuels the fight forward to fix it.
Funny, interesting. Well, so I had both. I don't know about narcissism. I'm sure. I have no doubt. I mean,
and to clarify, I'm not saying that I would never be diagnosed as a clinical narcissist. When we speak of narcissism and discernment of spirits, it is that inward focus of, I'm only thinking about me, and what I'm dealing with, I'm not thinking about
Nothing
anything
else really
So if
exists.
we hadn't said that before in any of these episodes, because I think people hear narcissism and they kind of cringe.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the clinical diagnosis of narcissism. We're talking about an excessive focus on your own
Right.
struggle.
Right. Narcissism is a continuum of intensity.
Yeah.
There's a clinical one on the very end of
Yeah,
the continuum. And there's the rest of us who fluctuate from feeling sorry for ourselves or, angry at ourselves, whatever.
Yeah.
So I am a person who has struggled with despair. And it was because of how long and intense my suffering was as a child, my entire childhood, as a young adult, my entire young adult life, even after coming to know Jesus, and then into for a relationship, the fruit of which is you, but it wasn't a marriage. It was a disaster, So until I came out of that, that realm, became Catholic, I didn't get above the line really, below the line is various intensities of desolation. Above the line is, the ability to go have consolation and desolation both, but predominantly consolation. There was a middle period. I mean, I grew a lot in my faith, even as a Protestant. And so there was little tips of consolation, but they were very short-lived. And then I had to deal with all the junk and all my own sin and all my bad decisions or whatever. It took a while to wiggle out. So I guess maybe then I identify with this rule, maybe a little more, but I'd be interested how you do. So the analogy I give is going in for surgery. I've had so many surgeries, and I had them since I was so young. Like my earliest memory is literally of being in a hospital bed, scared to death, alone, not knowing where my parents were, So, but what I learned very quickly at a very young age is every time I went into the ER, I got better, And so, and oftentimes fairly quickly, because I have severe, on a scale of 1 to 10, asthma wise, it's at a 10, and to the point where even just, not too long ago, I'm on a new treatment now, which is a new discovery. It's amazing. But not too long ago, if I'd have caught the flu at the wrong time, I could have died easily.
Yeah.
So now, great, thanks be to God, I'm not near that cliff anymore. But so I would go in the hospital because when I was young, the treatments were very immature, related to, or very ineffective to dealing with emergency lung issues. Go in the hospital, they put me on a machine, and I'm within 40 minutes. Sometimes they would give me an injection. I can't remember what the injection was, but I'm like a new person, So that taught me to see the hospital as a good thing. And then many surgeries. Now surgeries are worse than that because
you have a recovery period. You have a prep period.
Anesthesia. And did I respond poorly to anesthesia.
Yeah.
Once I had a surgery on my stomach, as an example. And so they had to create essentially a new or retighten my valve at the top of your stomach, just at the bottom of your esophagus, top of your stomach. And so I had stitches and staples in my stomach. And after the anesthesia, I threw up for like 24 hours. And the afterwards, they had to give me this radioactive barium to see if I had ripped the staples open, once they had calmed me down.
Yeah.
That was that bad. But even with that, what I knew the process. So I knew I'm going to go in, I'm going to get prepped. It's no big deal. Then I'm getting anesthesia. I mean, they're putting in IVs, and that's not fun, but some nurses are really good at it. And so you don't feel it too much. But it's just being in a hospital, being confined, can't do what I want to do. I feel like crap, So then, the anesthesia, always have hated the feeling of going under. It's very disconcerting. I don't know what it feels like to die, like those last minutes where you lose your consciousness, but it is very disturbing to me.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you and you feel okay for a little while, and then you start to hurt like hell, and I'm wanting more, painkiller or whatever, depending on the surgery. And then the painkiller and all of the anesthesia messes with your digestive system, and that doesn't work. So anyway, the benefit of that, all of that, is it going through it 10 times. Let's just, for argument's sake, I know exactly what the beginning, the middle, and the end looks like. And I know how long it all takes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what kind of surgery, it all has a predictable pattern that it follows. Well, when you know that about the spiritual life, as like my last heart surgery, which was almost a mystical experience. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but I went in so prepared. And hopefully I hadn't talked about this on the show.
I don't think you have.
Bored people to death. But I went in so prepared spiritually that I had on my mind people that I was praying for. And it's emotional to me. But as the medicine is going down from the bag into my veins to take me under that period that I hated so much, and then all of the pain that would happen afterwards and discomfort, I was offering it up for people. And I had perfect peace. I mean, joy in the face of feeling awful.
Right.
So it's a little bit contradictory in terms of I had all, but the point is, when you understand that desolation always ends, and when you understand the normal ebb and flow, and you understand how to fight, how to think, how to live in it, I suspect, 9 out of 10 people who have my underlying condition died in the first round of COVID. So people who have my comorbidities, and other issues, died. Why didn't I die? Well, one, God wanted me here, so there's a supernatural reason. But on a human level, I knew how to fight. I knew how to cope. But it was tough. I will say.
I remember that whole
COVID was the hardest.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah. COVID was the absolute hardest experience for me. And I was talking to Father Ripperger about it, just as a side note. And both of us believe that there's a demonic element to
I'm not surprised.
this thing. So all that said, this is the rule we're talking about. He says, let one who's in consolation think. And Ignatius is always telling us how to think, just like St. Paul. Dwell on these things. Think like this, Ignatius is saying, think how he will conduct himself in the desolation. When one is in consolation, recognize desolation is coming. I think we did talk about this in Rule 8. Anyway, maybe not. Desolation is coming, and how you'll conduct yourself in desolation, because you think, the other problem is when you're in consolation, you can have a problematic expectation of this should be normal.
Right.
You were going to say something.
No, it's I always refer to it as storing up consolations, right? So like this morning, as an example, I'm in consolation this morning.
That's great.
Super rare. I'm trying to get back on track after Seek. Whenever we I don't know how you do it, but whenever I travel for stuff, it just wrecks my schedule, and it takes weeks to get back. It's something I'm working on. Got up super early, got my prayer in, got a workout in, got to listen. And here's what I found. This is what's interesting. I've noticed a trend that when I'm entering into consolation, and it's for whatever reason, it happens when I keyed in on the music portion of it. So I start listening to music that I enjoy, that brings me joy, to like build up on that existing consolation. And I go about my day, and then something happens, and then it starts bringing me down into the desolation. So this morning that's happening. There's a sweet old lady at the gas station who couldn't get her gas cap off. And she's like, can you help me get my gas cap? And I helped her. I was like, oh man, this is great. What a great day.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But I had the thought, whenever you're feeling like this, whenever you're, the music, that's what keyed it in for me. Whenever you're listening to the music you like, and it's all good stuff, something's coming around the corner.
Right.
So it's a temptation to desolation to keep me from doing this rule, is what I realized this morning.
Interesting.
So what I did was, okay, Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm in consolation. Praise God. And if something comes, I'm going to try to carry as much of this consolation into that desolation as I can.
Yeah.
And something probably will come.
Right.
It's the world. It's broken. We're all
Right.
humans. I might do something stupid. I might run over a rock and have to switch out the fan blade or the blades on the mower.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not, what I'm doing is actively fighting against that temptation to fear of what desolation may come, to remove me from praising God in the moment of consolation.
Right.
If that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah. So there's two reactions. There's two mindsets, I'll say it differently, in consolation. One leads to death. Remember, St. Paul said the mindset on the spirit is life and joy and peace, but the mindset on the flesh is death.
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset of the spirit that you acquired is the right mindset, which is it's normal to ebb and flow and I'm going to be fine.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
What I had, and I was probably in depression, and I was clinically diagnosed as depressed. What I had was, because of the suffering was so long, and I had not a theology. I didn't have a theology or an understanding of the beauty of the Catholic teaching and suffering. I didn't know how to join it to the sufferings of Jesus or console the heart of Jesus or anything constructive. It just was hard. I had when's the next shoe going to drop? So I'm in consolation thinking I'm going to get smacked. So rather than just being thankful for the consolation.
Right. Right.
And because when you do that, you can't enjoy the consolation.
Right.
And you don't even really rest, which is what the Lord's trying to do for you, is help you to rest.
Right. Right. Because what that temptation this morning made me want to turn off the music. And I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
That's the effect that it had. No, don't give into the consolation, because if you give into the consolation, something bad is coming.
And that's the enemy working on you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, no, I'm going to turn my music up louder. This is good.
Yeah, good.
Like,
Perfect.
I'm not playing that game.
Perfect.
But it's one of the first times that I've had that recollection, because as we talked about in the last show, I believe, you have to recognize these trends.
Yeah.
So that when this stuff pops up, you can properly respond to whatever's going on.
And it's like I keep saying, the key. I mean, if you could summarize the rules, and I can't say it enough, it's look up.
Yeah.
That's if you force me to 2 words, look up. That summarizes. So you're in desolation. You don't look up. Look, and obviously where God isn't directional, but that's sort of how we think of him in our humanity.
Right,
up, right?
Yeah.
Look up. Get up out of your circumstance. What's going on? Why is this happening? How do I fight? Instead of just feeling it and then getting wrapped up in the feelings. It was funny because when I was in New Zealand, we were given a retreat on this, and I was trying to ask them, because we like pill bugs. Everybody in the United States knows what pill bugs are.
Yeah.
Those little bugs look like they have armor on them.
Roly-polies is what
Roly-polies or whatever. And trying to figure out what the similar bug was in New Zealand, because New Zealand doesn't have all the same bugs, and they don't have as many bugs as we do.
Really?
So it was a funny conversation. and I can't remember. Stata. I think it was what they called a stata. Anyway, I think it's a stater or something. It was humorous.
Yeah.
So, but obviously a pill bug curls it up on itself. That's a good symbol for narcissism, because it hurts and it wants to self-protect, but it's sort of for pill bug, it's fine. For us, it's self-destructive.
Right.
Because we need to deal with our feelings, not just, self-protect.
Yeah.
So rule 8 is, when you're in consolation, think how you conduct yourself in
Rule
desolation.
9. Or no.
Rule 10, sorry.
Yeah.
And I
we both got it wrong.
Right. So 10, I'm sorry. Rule 10, when you're in consolation, think how you conduct yourself in desolation, because you understand the process and you have the proper expectation of the ups and downs, which will come after taking new strength for that time, which in the end is about what you said. The secret is, when we're in consolation, getting rid of any thought that when's the next shoe going to drop, because that's a pessimistic, narcissistic kind of thing, and I'm not calling anybody names, I'm just saying that's what it does to us. Rejoice in the fact that God is giving you a time of rest. You know, a great example of this in life that happened to me was I was recruited by a particular religious order to become the head of the National Catholic Register, who owned the newspaper at the time. And I had no idea what a mess things were,
Yeah.
you know? And so I entered into this like 3-year, 2008, 9, summer of 2008, 9, 2009, 2010, 2.5-year, whatever period. And then we were acquired by EWTN. And it was absolute. It was the worst. No, I shouldn't say it that way. It was the hardest managerial experience of my life, just because there was, you know, Father John Partunik was a part of that. He was like a light in the darkness for me. But there were others who worked for the register who had attitudes and behaviors that, you know, were the reason the thing was failing, and they had no sense. So they would fight me to retain the things that would make the ship go down.
Right.
No, this is the way we should do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're poking holes in your ship, my brother. You're a good person, but you're killing this thing. So, but that 2.5 years was, I was away from you guys for 3 weeks out of the month for the first couple of years, which was incredibly painful. You were newly married to Stephanie. You were like, we had just gotten custody of you, and you were going through
total train wreck,
a real trash time. And it was incredibly difficult. And and then we were acquired by EWTN. So then I start working for EWTN, and I realized I was in the fight mode still. And so we had come from Connecticut, New York, where the headquarters were, to the South, which is very laid back, to an organization that was comparatively way less intense. And I'm not criticizing either institution, just the cultures were very different. The register culture in the previous institution was super high stress, super intense. The register under EWTN was way more peaceful. But it took me a year in that peace to realize that God has given me rest. And funny enough, just because of my own, you know, intellectual capacity, managerial skill, I don't know what, it could sound prideful, but I'm just describing the facts. I could run the register in just, you know, probably 20 hours a week. And you know, the CEO of EWTN figured that out eventually and promoted me to president of the whole thing. But it was hard. I had to go through this process of going, no, this is good. I need to slow down. Living in the South is really good for me. That I can't get a plumber in a day, you know, that I used to get in California or wherever I lived. And it takes, instead of a day, it takes a week or two. That's okay. I need that kind of, you know, slow down. So there's this orientation of the way you think about life and even leisure. It reminds me of Joseph Pieper's reflection on leisure, which it deals with this very topic as well, not in the exact, from a different lens, but learning to rest in the Lord and learning to just go, it's cool. It's, you know, I'm blessed now, and it's okay. And there's not a shoe that's going to drop, and I don't need to stir anything up. I just need to receive God's love and his mercy, because that's what's happening in a time of consolation. So anyway, I'm rambling on. Is any of that helpful?
Yeah. So what you were saying reminded me when I left policing, and I had a lot of mindset and habits that I had to break. And what's fascinating about that is a lot of those habits were self-protective. So I was highly trained. I was one of the only guys who was qualified to carry a rifle on my shift. And, you know, I'd taken classes. You and I had taken classes for a long time.
And you were training cops.
I was training cops. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. So very qualified.
Inside of the police force and outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to justify, well, my intensity and my thought process on certain things is a good thing because I am a protector. But it had a negative aspect and connotation to it in its entirety, because I was very angry. I looked down on people. A lot of different things. And I'm wondering now, because I looking back, I would say that I was in a constant state of desolation, primarily because, kind of like what you said, in your sicknesses and surgeries, when I was those years as a police officer, there's no consolation. It was just constant battle.
When you also live in an habitual sin.
And habitual sin, of course. But I'm now wondering about those folks who have a constant, and I'm not condemning anyone, but everyone knows someone who's like this, I would bet. But folks who just have a constant bad attitude.
Eeyore.
Yeah, and I'm now thinking about the sin against hope.
Yeah,
and how if you are not following these rules, and you are not storing up consolation, and you are not looking up and saying, I know this is going to end, well, of course you're going to constantly be ticked off, and of course you're going to have a negative attitude, and of course everything is bad, and you have a victim mindset. But that's, I would argue, is a sin against hope.
That's the definition of despair.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just fascinating, all after listening to you say that, it's kind of drawing these things together and bringing it to a deeper reality, that there's almost a deeper level of responsibility within the discernment of spirits to know, if I do not store up consolation, or if I do not look up in the midst of desolation, I could be at risk of the sin of despair.
It's probably more likely you're going to fall into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you know,
and I would say probably if it's perpetual.
Yeah.
Because
if you suffer for a long time. Is that what you mean?
Well, if your response, because of course, obviously temptation is not sin. Response in that temptation in the negative is sin.
Right.
So it is normative to go through desolation and think, this sucks.
Yeah.
It is normative to say, man, I wish things were different. It's normative to deal with. That's just your emotions. And
it's just human.
Yeah. You're basically being warned, hey, you're in desolation. Right.
Yeah.
But if you don't change the way that you think, is what I'm saying. Those people who are perpetually in that mindset of things are never going to get better.
Well, and those become the victim. These are the people who have a victim mentality.
Yeah.
Somebody or something outside of me is always oppressing me, suppressing me, hurting me, harming me, and thus it will always be so. And everything I see, in perpetuity, I interpret that way,
right?
Because that's essentially the lens I'm choosing, instead of choosing the lens that God is asking us to choose. And I say, God, by the Holy Spirit through St. Paul, think on these things, whatever is good, whatever is beautiful, whatever, because I remember being in severe desolation before I had studied these rules. I remember, it's a long story, and I mean this truly, for no fault of my own, I was kicked out of my home.
Yeah.
I was the one who wasn't an alcoholic, drinking heavily. I was a devout Christian, but I was also very sick, and I missed a court date. And then there was an accusation made, and I wasn't there to defend myself. And I missed the court because I was struggling with Meniere's disease. I could barely function on a day-to-day basis.
So bad. I remember having to carry you as a child, a young child, carry you up the stairs.
As a teen, you carried me. Yeah.
I mean,
you were strong because it was when you were like 17, 18.
I feel like it was younger than that.
Because I was 175 pounds.
Yeah.
You had to be you did carry me up the stairs one time.
But that's how bad it was.
I ended up in a hotel, and I remember thinking, how in the hell did this happen?
Yeah. I'm
the one following the Lord. I'm not the one abandoning the family and the relationship. I'm not the one, and I don't want to despair. And obviously I've never said a name, the name is different than our last name. So, but I do remember also in that time thinking about that scripture passage and asking myself, how do I do that in this situation? How do I think about whatever is good and whatever is lovely and whatever is beautiful? Some of my solace I found in music, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
You mentioned music earlier, and I started listening to music that lifted my spirit because it had truth in it.
Right.
Or orient it to truth and to fight against despair and to build the virtue of hope. The key is fight. You said it. I guess I am more prone to despair than you, although not for a long time, not in this last decade of my life, but we do share that fighting. It's like, if I'm going to be alive, I'm fighting.
Yeah.
Well, one or the other. So last words on this, just because we've talked to her a lot around different ideas and concepts. So when you're in consolation, order your mind to consider what that you need to rest and receive, but also be aware that there's a battle coming ahead. One of the lines we studied, the Apostolic VA community, which anybody can join in our studies. Second, fourth Saturday, it's free, 8:00 Central Time, apostoliviae.org, apostoliva.org. We studied through Scupoli Spiritual Combat, and one of the phrases that I think captures this is you have to learn to love the fight more than the victory, at least in this life. In this life, you got to learn to love the fight. Okay, now I'm going to fight. Good, great, let's go. Yeah. Rather than, victim, shy away, effeminacy, whatever. Because then the Lord comes, because that's how he wants us to be.
Well, I'd argue you don't have an option.
If you want to be sane, if you want to live a good life, if you want to know joy, if you want to know peace and healing, you're right. You've got to love the fight. So with that.
All right. Romans 16:20, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. The grace of our Lord Jesus be with you. Amen.
Amen.